listening as if the internet would not be the outer world. Yes, when people ask me, what is the secret, or what has been the most vital or essential ingredient in the mix, in the recipe for my own emergence or remembrance or reawakening and Kundalini awakening process? Well, there would be many, of course, because it is a very rich brew. So there's so many ingredients activating each other. But I would have to say that one of the main ones is me being off the grid for at least 7 years. Mm-hmm. Me being without electricity, without wires, without a mirror, without a bathroom, with barely any walls enclosing me, and having that direct interaction with nature, with unmanicured, uncultivated, unadulterated nature. Yeah. And with less interaction with human beings, actually. And so one of those main ingredients, if I go there, was to not be speaking English, actually. Mm-hmm. To not have those forms and sequences and ideations being expressed or being reinforced by the speaking of any recognizable tongue, especially English. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What if you could give words to the difference that this made compared to a nervous system that's constantly on the grid? How would you phrase that? How would you try to describe in English?
Initially, it really felt, and this was in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. So it felt like being unplugged, literally, like having for a while it was just a non-stop streaming or purging outwards of my body-mind complex. Mm-hmm. Any and all previous idea or notion of forms, of shapes, of colors, it's like being emptied. So the main difference between the nervous system that is constantly on the grid and knows only that, really, to living for an extended period of time without any of that interference or intervention in the nervous system from sounds and colors and forms that are electrified in the mind of a man or channeled into your own body through structures, construct, wires, machinery, that is the brainchild of a man, meaning that it's just sounds of nature, just organic sounds born not of man, but of birds and other creatures, and the bamboo in the breeze, and the surging river, and the crickets. So the difference between the nervous system, my nervous system, for instance, if I speak from my own experience of being off the grid and then interacting on the grid, is a difference that could be described in terms of food, in terms of drink, of food, of sustenance, whereby the sustenance or the nutrition that I would be receiving off the grid without those electronic interferences, it would be like having milk straight from the mother's breast. It would be like taking of fruits straight from, you know, a long forgotten tree, even maybe the forbidden tree. And then compared to something that is artificially produced, synthetic, or bastardized or adulterated in some way, that when I would take into my nervous system, when that input is being circulated through my nervous system, the input that comes from being on the grid, my nervous system definitely recognizes the difference. In the same way as I would recognize the difference between something that is pure and whole and uninterfered with, compared to something that is toxic, poisonous, or so refined and processed that my system would have a hard time to derive an immediate nourishment from it, where my system would have a more challenging time to assimilate and evacuate it accordingly in a natural way. So that is the main difference between something pure and whole and organic and immediately nourishing and able to be assimilated, compared to something that my system would have to work harder to recognize and to filter out and to ultimately eliminate, knowing that the nourishment is not, you know, wouldn't be something so benign. The substance isn't immediately benign. It's there's more processing of it out of the system. Yeah, that's why when we go off the grid back into nature, when my nervous system is back into pure nature without that interference, it's like, you know, being able to trust and being able to open the nervous system fully without fear of being contaminated, to give up oneself fully.
It has a tragic beauty that we talk about that being connected via internet, and it touches me so much. It resonates deeply, but besides that, it's like pulling you in front of a webcam feels like asking you to sacrifice something. And that is something that you give words to and that you describe with a kind of generosity of a nervous system, in this case, your nervous system. But still there is something of, it's unquestionable that what we try to gain from connection through internet has a price on some level. I think we know. And of course, your nervous system is like so out loud in knowing how it knows, because it knows the difference between nourishment and false nourishment. And I think what happens so often is, since we never ever get the remembrance of this true nourishment, just safe, trustworthy nourishment, we go into, let's connect with our Facebook friends. I mean, just because we crave for connection and we crave for being in sync with all those frequencies around, and then those frequencies around reflecting back to us how much we are into false nourishment, starving in a way of let's nourish ourselves at least here. And it touches me deeply that there is some kind of, there is no way of you developing an addiction to the false nourishment just because you know the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And at the same time, our nervous systems can be trained, and we can draw out the innate capacity of the nervous system to adapt And we can feed and support our nervous systems to be more resilient as they are, as the nervous system encounters the necessity to integrate the worlds of off-grid and on-grid, of inner and outer. So even as I'm here sacrificing to be in front of the webcam, at the same time, my system can draw from the essential flavors of what it is to connect with you right now through my sense organs. So I'm still able to, through seeing you, Ilan, through being able to take in through my eyes, to take in through my ears, and even in a sense to reach out and touch you, because through my eyes and through what I'm seeing, I'm able to have an experience of the softness, the smoothness, the moisture in your skin, of the roundness and the contours and the textures and the colors of all your features. So I'm still having a nourishing experience as I communicate and connect with you here, even in this form. So there is this need now for me, as I come more into the wired world.
Which wild world? Are we wild? We are so tamed. We are just humans. You are the wildest species on Earth, guys. Whoa. Welcome in the truly shocking wilderness. Wow.
Requires me to up level, to upgrade, to give extra support of my nervous system to be able to mutate if necessary, to roll with it, to roll with it, to navigate the flow by training in the technology necessary. So I can do this, Ilan.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
And there are at least 3 traces that feel so rich for me. I want to jump into them. First of all, if the two of us meet and I didn't spend years off the grid, and now I'm sharing a kind of fragility or electric sensitivity, or even, I think, a sense of struggling with Kundalini energy from time to time that feels somehow connected to me being built in a world that is somehow constantly on the grid, if I want it or not. So a very egoistic question. How nice, Uma, that you can mutate and that you can sacrifice yourself. Can somebody like me, who is maybe the majority of people, can somebody like me do that as well? And not like, let's not focus on me personally, but there is something of a real question. And I learned also in our conversations about that, there is an absolute unvulnerability, and there is something that is vulnerable, and there is something that can be damaged, and there is a nervous system that can burn. It can burn down. So my question is, besides being able to mutate into the world of technology and being on the grid, is there a damage that still happens to a westernized nervous system that is constantly on the grid if it wants or not? I think that's a very basic question around insight, yes, wisdom, yes. Can I manage it physically? Can I have the capacity in my life force? And I do feel a negative impact of being on the grid on so many levels. And to be honest, they feel like a structural violence penetrating me through my skin, violating my boundaries 24/7. And the only reason why I do not scream and suffer from that on a conscious level is, I can't afford, as nobody around can. We say we do not feel those grids around. Yes, but that doesn't mean that they do not exist. Quite the opposite. They are so overwhelming and such a like enemy without an enemy, such an overwhelm that we shut down, and shutting down is a survival modus. And I think what gets reawakened at maybe naive terms, can get reawakened in a life off the grid is something of this inner power that comes from orienting towards reality instead of orienting towards the friction with reality. So I think there is a lot of trauma built in the kind of form that I even recognize, how I navigate, how I orient, how I feel safe, false safety. So there is a lot of that being busy in my individual process, but also on a level of global, realistic, spiritual, physical merging of traditions and technology, etc., where I do not want to get around the point, maybe we have to change something, because otherwise our nervous system knows a lot, channels a lot, and burns down. And we can die from that. I mean, it's easy. Dying from spirit, Kundalini energy is something it can happen. Just because you can't hold it. I mean, just very real. If you do not respect those forces, you just don't know what you're talking about. That's it. Yeah. So I'm very sorry for my, but there is something in that urgency that feels like, I do not want to hear from you necessarily, oh, everybody has a chance. Maybe we do have to step into something and sacrifice something from a life on the grid in order to create a grid that represents our wisdom and how we are designed and how wise we are and how amazing and how powerful, instead of a life on the grid that violates us, that shuts our cells down around their capacity for detoxification, etc. Better now. Yeah, but that's...
Yeah, there's many things there. Many things there. One question that you had is there damage? Is there damage done living on the grid? And so then I'd like to put the question to you, because you are in a city and you do interact with many people as a teacher and as a very lucid observer with the ability to, and a translucency that you have in your own nature, and a porosity. So you would be not only observing, but you would then be processing a lot of what you experience in the world at large, in your own body. So I ask you first to tell me, when you interact with people in your world, are you seeing damage? Are you feeling damage in the nervous systems from being in a city, from being in a grid, from being sensitized because of the Kundalini awakenings, Kundalini activations that are happening while being on the grid? What damage do you encounter? What exists?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. What a gift. And I feel a kind of paradox answer. I think it's somehow important to pronounce both poles or give words to both poles. First of all, let's start with the level of, yes, I do feel a damage. I do feel a sense of exhaustion and suffering from seeing suffering, and suffering from seeing my own suffering as well as the one of others, that feels easier to digest, easier to recover from when I'm in nature. And even, to be honest, nature is a German forest. There is still a lot of on the grid going on in the German forest right now. And especially now or whenever with 5G satellites, etc. So a forest might not be a forest, but something of, okay, where? What are you talking about? However, this is a pretty intact nature where I can go to. And I feel a damage in my nervous system around sinking more into remembering everything is all right. This is a being alive. It's a very normal thing. It's well tested since a few billion of years. Many other living beings managed living on Earth. This is safe. And then me jumping into a sense of, I would even want to call it addiction, to triggers, to problems, to thoughts, where I feel my capacity for inhabiting the beauty and the wholeness and the sacredness of everything in my nervous system, I feel that I hit a wall in that. I have a limit in that in my nervous system. And I put that into connection to the kind of ongoing 24/7 influence of the collective field. Let's talk about it like that. And the collective field amongst humans for me is, of course, something that has a lot of trauma in it. And in that way, an incapacity to feel fully safe or fully full with energy. And underneath, there is something that would come from a kind of spiritual transmutation of biological instinct. I do not know, but there is something of the bigger step out of my comfort zone. When you ask me, is there a damage? Is me saying, no, there is no damage. Because it's like, if this incarnation that I'm trapped in is not shitty, I would have to let go of excuses for being this.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of that, because I feel that there is so much potential, like my brain is craving for opening and opening and opening more. And it's so hard for me to forgive myself not being the next layer that I see, being always slower as I am in parts of mine. And still, it's a kind of comfort zone feeling that there is something wrong with me or with the world. And at the same time, I'm so afraid, Uma, of saying that something in the human world, in the technological world, is good or that it didn't hurt, because I get so easily betrayed by people who might use that in order to say, so we do not have to do something. So I feel like maybe I'm letting myself down around the kind of suffering or the kind of price that it takes for me living in this world. It's a real challenge for me, managing nervous system and wanting to open up in a world that is so much defined by fear of opening up. So I would love that to be true, and I somehow see that it's true, and I somehow can give spiritual models or visions for that, how that is true, that 5G internet is another way of reawakening the collective Kundalini energy. However, at the end of the day, I want to trust the pleasure and the abundance and the beauty of life inside out more than the reliability of challenge or of learning. Yeah.
So
I feel a sense of exhaustion. Why do I have to? Why do I have to learn to fly because I'm thrown out of the nest? It feels always too early. This era feels too early for me. It's too much. It's not too much, but it feels like that. And I do not always want to just be the brave one figuring out the next step of cutting edge paradigm shift. I want to be with the sounds of nature at night.
Yeah, and this is the grieving.
Yeah.
The grieving for what is being lost, the recognition of the change as the changing is occurring. To not project yourself out of the moment, because the mind can see and understand that it's going to be okay, when the reality is right now that it's both okay and not okay.
Yeah.
And that there's a requirement for enough slowing down and enough spaciousness of time in order to allow both to coexist, the both okay and not okay to coexist, even in their absolute variance, even in them being at odds with each other, even in their difference, that there's a wide enough container through the spaciousness of time, a wide enough crucible for these opposites to coexist in their difference, and eventually through the heat of awareness, through the heat of just sitting there like a chicken on an egg, that warmth allowing the transmutation, the formation, the generation, and eventually the hatching of a whole other way of being that is the embodied assimilation, decoction even of the opposites, one into the other, to create this third way, this third force of being. So basically, the key I would see here is the slowing down element, the spaciousness, the allowance of the gap, of the transition, of the opening, to just sit there in that space where there's no bridge yet. There's just the big gap. In Sanskrit we call this sandhya, the sandhya kala, the in-between of time, the twilight zone, where it's not yet dawn. The dawn hasn't come yet. Yes, we can conceive that there will be a dawn, that sun will rise again and illuminate and strengthen and give us fuel for whatever it takes, whatever's to manifest in this next phase. But before the sun's rays break, that there be this in-between, this twilight zone that is neither the darkness of the unknown, but nor is it yet the full effulgence of knowledge. So to allow ourselves to sit in that in-between where both can exist. Yes, it's not okay. It's not okay. There's loss. There's a grieving. There's a destruction happening. There is damage occurring. Oxidative damage is very real. It's measurable. The damage that happens in the nervous system, the frying, the frazzling, the overwhelming, the interference is real. And yes, it's not okay. And yes, it's okay because we're so gifted as human beings. We are so graced and we have bottomless resources and an overview, you know, a constant, unchanging light of awareness that is shining without bias, the friend of all, that is perennially able to see the indestructible, to see the eternal. So we have that capacity to transform, transmute even, transfigure, transmorgify even through Kundalini. The not okay into absolutely okay. Absolutely perfect, just as is. So, you know, in the tantric tradition, there is a great focus on the training of the nervous system, of the supporting, of the resilience, and the, you know, the miraculous seeming capacities of the nervous system, the training of the nervous system to be able to plug in to limitlessness without frying, and the limitlessness including anything and everything, including the not okay, to be able to plug into the whole spectrum from okay to absolutely not okay, to plug in and to circulate and process all of those aspects, all of those possibilities through the system, and not get poisoned. And if there is poison, here's the thing, is that we train the capacity to transmute the poison into the very nectar, as you know, that will substantiate a whole other way of being that is born on the grid, that can derive power from the grid, because it's all electrical.
It's almost as if extracting the essence of nourishment, not extracting, but still seeing or knowing about the essence of true nourishment within the false nourishment. And I feel so, on so many levels, I feel so angry about, I do not have a real teacher and a real tradition, and I do not know what to do. It just happens in me. On the other hand, it portrays in such a vivid way in me how far. It's wonderful because I tell you the same story that I tell you before of exhaustion, but now from the very different angle of inner, intuitive, instinctive self-empowerment of my nervous system goes so far. And also, I think, at least in my past, I think maybe every child in a westernized culture did that to some extent in the early childhood, exposed myself subconsciously on purpose to the poison because of the subconscious knowing I can handle that. I can even use that as fuel. So I feel that this kind of other part of the other side of the same story of my exhaustion to your question, is there damage, Ilan? Question mark. And the other thing is, when you talk about there is no bridge, just sit in the slowing down, in the spaciousness. Maybe I talk about that because of my wounding, maybe because it's a collective wounding of, I feel a fire in myself coming up of, okay, I commit myself to sitting in the richness of the being slowed down. Let's call twilight zone, without going towards the dawn, wanting to pull the sun up the sky. And I want to commit to that with a kind of precision, because I feel I have to be super alert in order to not go into the collective trap of going subconsciously into the twilight zone, and then, oh, we have nothing to do, like distraction or somehow collapsing instead of being. I think they are so similar as maybe dissociation and meditation might be for certain people with certain signatures of trauma in their nervous system, like one and the same thing. Both is observing something and being spaced out and disembodied. So I feel very challenged around managing a precise embodiement of the space in between without saying it will happen tomorrow.
Yes. So this is why I use the word training, that we have to train the system to approach, to know what you're approaching when it comes to that spaciousness, that abyss, that voidness between the known and the unknown, or between the unknown and the known, either way, is to train the ability to go step by step, to train the nervous system, to allow for going so slow in the first place. So our nervous systems have become so accustomed to speed and to be hurrying and to be able to stay on point and stay ahead. So there would be first a retraining of dissolution, of starting from zero, but to even train to know what zero is. So this is the thing. This is why there could be re-traumatization. There could be the default dissociation. There could be the escapism or the collapse and all of these other coping strategies when encountering the void again. But there is a way to reframe or to rebuild a fresh relationship with the emptiness, with the vulnerability, with the openness, before even starting to step again towards it. Training is necessary, but even to retrain, there would have to be a dedication of the spaciousness of time. There would have to be a burning, you mentioned fire, there would have to be a burning desire to open those doors again, to lay the pathwork, to look for the people who have been there, or keep going back and forwards from that voidness. Again, there has to be the yearning, the longing, the fire's lit.
I feel, at least for the second time, of course, in this conversation, I want to put it into different words. It's so vivid how your nervous system knows or is this embodiment of your words. So I deeply learn from experiencing, listening to you as just an embedded frequency in the whole experience, being here with you. I feel somehow resistance to tell me how somebody can do that, just because I feel the sacredness and I do not want to pull everything into a spotlight. This is not about talking about twilight and then needing the spotlight on it. I just want to say officially that I would be honored, of course, to somehow co-create, facilitate, help with any kind of form that might be a container, a format that's precise enough, worthy enough, wise enough to introduce nervous systems of whomever to this step. As I think, even though we are talking in abstract terms, it's super precise. And I think you can feel how much this is a razor's edge. So I somehow, if you want to tell me what to do, Uma, give me a tip, but I don't want to ask you, and I somehow feel even resistant to squeezing that in this kind of format or conversation right here, because I feel I would push my foot into a door that is meant to be seen for now. And that's it.
And I feel inspired by just even the word tip. It just, you know, it activates a train of inspired thought. And the response to that is very natural for me, and it's already emergent, and it's at the tip of my tongue. And it's so, it's a no-brainer. So it takes no effort for me to share it, and ultimately no effort for us to circulate it. And the tip, that is so essential, is listening. It's to do with the ears. And because it's to do with the ears, it's to do with the element of space itself, because space is the host of sound vibration. And that has to be where we begin, is to hone and refine and to explore and play with our powers. And even if we have hearing impediments, there's other ways, of course, to receive vibration of not only spoken word, but unspoken thought. So even if it's not through our left ear and right ear, that we be playing and ultimately training our capacity to receive vibratory impulse and the messages from in between the words. So it's really simple for me. It's the first tip. Because until we're listening, what need is there to say anything more? You know, the tricky thing is that when we start to open to that degree, and we are on the grid, we will be becoming so sensitive, and we'll be picking up the indesirable, the undesired frequencies, as well as you and me and others that we resonate with, as well as what we resonate with. We will be susceptible to what is disturbing and dissonant. So then there would be another tip needed. So then how to prepare to be listening with such power and be protected at the same time. How to be porous and open, and at the same time to be on guard and to be sheltered and armored, to be both at the same time. This again is the science of Tantra, what it is being so specialized over, you know, immeasurable amounts of time in some ways. What it's been so specialized to address and to facilitate is that training of being both at the same time.
Yeah.
Without split or polarized or fragmented, to be both.
I think for maybe some cases that might resonate, listening to those dissonant frequencies, somehow in tantric terms merging with them, right, really meeting them, and not doing that from a sense of self-punishment or self-hatred. And I think that is something that can be so easily mixed up in a nervous system that's also influenced by trauma. Like, for example, my nervous system. There is a lot of unclarity, I feel, in the cultural matrix that has been provided to me around what is truly a path of self-love and what is truly a path of misery, just because I think I do not deserve anything better. So it's almost like, yeah, as you say, not collapsing in the dissonant frequencies, not freezing there, not staying there, but staying even more in the space of, I can digest. I'm here in order to digest. I'm a digesting human being or digesting living being.
Yes. I resonate with this, the way you put it, when you said that we have to be able to meet the meeting, the dissonance. So again, the work would be to meet the consciousness as consciousness in both resonance and dissonance. To be so fully re-identified with the consciousness in all aspects of its expression, whether they're polarized or whether they're synthesized and resolved into one whole. To be able to meet consciousness as consciousness at any point, at any degree, of the full spectrum of experiencing, of perceiving, and yes, of ingesting, digesting, assimilating, evacuating, circulating, and ultimately embodying. So again, this is the training to meet consciousness as consciousness. And the training to regulate, let's say, the training to regulate the digestive power itself as a fire, which would be very different, very uniquely configured in each body, in each system. Regulation.
I again have a sense of, even though I might call the words abstract, that it is something very precise, well known in every nervous system, what you talk about. And I want to somehow try to reframe and then double check in with you if that's something what I wanted, or what came to my mind when I listened to you a few minutes ago was around this. Yes, for example, Ilan, you will be listening and then you will meet a whole bunch of frequencies that do not feel like pleasure and they do not feel like the forest sounds of pure nature. And I was like, yes, my nervous system somehow opens up, or it doesn't open up. But there is no, oh, I open up to the sunshine and I just shut down when it's dark because I only, so there is an unconditional being love for aliveness no matter what. That is my nervous system. If I go with my nervous system, it opens me up to what is and not to the pleasure. And now you talk not about nervous system, but about consciousness, but you somehow again put words into the same thing that seems to me like that meet consciousness as consciousness. And I'm so thrilled about, for example, comparing Neo Tantra, which is a lot about, and orgasmicness and pleasure, etc. And then old Tantra, like, they were doing quite the opposite. They were dealing with death. They were dealing on the graveyard. Okay, so some kind of, maybe the two of you have to talk with each other. And I think it puts a beautiful, it's a beautiful example over time going between the poles, because consciousness as consciousness does also mean it's just sunshine. It's just pleasure. It's just an orgasm. It's not something that like, I go wherever just because it feels like I do not leave the point. And if I do not leave the point for the sunshine, I somehow exactly train myself for not leaving the point for the darkness. But because I'm so maybe conditioned around leaving the point for the pleasure, just because we had a little bit not enough party during the last 6,000 years, there is something of, therefore I have to do the extra job for the death. or the extra job for the challenge or the friction. I feel so thrilled by Tantra saying, we are talking about the middle. We are not talking about you mastering this or that. We are talking about the middle. And the question of Tantra, or the science of Tantras, seems to be, or seems to having been, however my English works, let's focus on the friction or challenging poles of the challenge instead of the pleasure parts, just because it's faster done this way. But in the end, it's about, consciousness as consciousness, which is somehow, in my experience, exactly the same as being my body as being my body. It's not a question. It's not a decision. It's not a process. It's me being okay with what I am or not being okay. I mean, being like that, what I am, or being like that, what I am. That's the only choice that I have. Neglecting it, or admitting it, which is still a ridiculous term, as if there would be two. That is how I not digest what resonates as a test, as a test flight when I listen to you in the second tantric tip. Yeah. You're right, it gives so much that humans are alive and embody something that is true nourishment. What I mean by that is that I'm so grateful for your existence and for knowing you. And when I talk with you, even words in English change their dharma. It's easy. And it's risky to say that because it pushes me even further out of my comfort zone, using different paradigms for my own case. But it isn't different. If I see something about you, I have to say it about life. So if I want to be grateful for the impact that you do, I have to see that that is just something true that I can't limit to your existence. Finally, I'm crying out of self-love, which makes me desperate. And it's so wonderful because on such a subtle energetic level, it's happening what we were talking about. That the true nourishment is something that shimmers in the confusion, in the false nourishment. How helpless we are when we cannot go into, I have a problem. What a knockout. Such horror. I need the third tantric tip.
Yeah. We have to look at what kind of digestive power, what level and capacity of metabolic, force and function has to be developed, supported in order to extract, in order to distill, in order to alchemize, process the real nourishment, even out of the false nourishment, and assimilate and evacuate properly the metabolic byproducts of such a process. To be able to do this for real, to be able to flourish.
To do it physically, I mean, in a super concrete way.
Physically, to be able to flourish, to be able to thrive indeed. And as I say that, I think of the image and the example that is used in the Indian tradition of the guru or the yogi or the master who is sitting on top of the pile of trash and rubbish that stinks to high heaven. But from his presence, from him being there, and from one being able to apprehend and to circulate with him in that moment, to be able to perceive through his feet, to be able to perceive through his existence, as you said, what he is perceiving, to be able to perceive what is perceivable through his existence, through his ability to transform that pile of stinking rubbish into a heap, an abundance of fragrance, of uplifting, soul nourishing, intoxicating fragrance, aroma, his ability to convert it, his ability to metabolize it from the gross into subtle. And through that possibility, through that measurable reality for others to be able to share in that expression.
Yeah.
In super
simple words, how? I mean, how to find back to the digestive superpowers that we have inside. I somehow already know how much you're an expert in that, and still I think it's something so underestimated, at least in my upbringing or culture. It's not about what you take in, it's about what can you do and how can you handle what you have taken in. So
yes.
The kind of...
So this is Tantra. Tantra was all about the simple how to make this real, how to realize, actualize all of these wonderful dreams and ideations that we have, these concepts, these abstracts, these teachings, how to actualize and turn as if magic, the teaching into a simple transmission. It's no longer teaching. It's like the waving of a wand. It's the manifestation, the making it real. The powers of the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer. And, for me, it's about how to have it all, having it all, how to have it all, how to be all that, the generator, the preserver, the protector, and the one who dissolves and reduces all form into formlessness. That is the source.
And again, it seems to be so vivid and real in this experience of listening and sharing this conversation with you, that having it all is like everything needs everything else. I mean, there is no having one thing. It's like having it all or have nothing, but illusion. So it's beautiful that it's so I feel a kind of experiencing that the spaciousness is that much in love with the form. I can't put it into better words, but there is no polarity where I have to decide, or where I do have to feel torn between on the grid, off the grid, having this, having that, being empty, being listening, being generating, giving birth, exhaling.
Yes, yes.
And
and having it all includes having nothing. You don't even have to choose between having all or having nothing, which is illusion. You can have the illusion. The illusion is real too.
Yeah. You do not escape from having it all anyway. Yeah.
Ultimately.
It touches me that tantric science over thousands of years studied something that prepares us very well for nowadays. It's amazing. It's like if you distill the essence from the form, that might be, of course, it's a culture that's somehow gone. And of course it isn't, because whatever is studied with such a sincerity, with such an amount of time and so much obsession and energy, and so many people, just the morphogenetic field of breakthroughs in that is insane. The amount of energy and trauma and death and healing and ecstasy that they cycled is insane. It's like really being plugged in. I thought off the grid would be off the grid. Whoa. This is on the grid. Okay, wow. And it touches me. There is nothing that died, and there is no application option that is gone. We can still play with the whole universe. We can still play with every era.
Yeah. So back to your how, the simple how. There was the technology. We have the technology to make this real.
Yeah.
Tell
me.
I have to wait to ask in a way.
Oh, you really want me to ask?
Do you really want to know? I know you, Ilan, you of course would really want to know that question. That questioning is real. The desire is real, the desire to know. So if I was to refer to traditional Tantra, old Tantra you call it, I like that. I've never heard that before. I like that, old Tantra. That technology is exactly the technology that is being assaulted, that is being abused, that is being mischaracterized and violated today. And that technology is called the guru-disciple relationship, which is integral, fundamental, and absolutely inseparable from old Tantra. So that it's written in the Tantric text or orally transmitted, because oral transmission is a key instrument of the guru, shishya, or disciple, master-disciple, relating, interrelating is oral transmission. So it has been transmitted that Tantra is Guru, Guru is Tantra. They do not feature in separation. They are inseparable. So this is the very technology that certain people will have an appetite for and may be avidly, actively digging for. And they will these days have to dig very, very far, because this is the preciousness that is being buried and relegated to, you know, a pile of rubbish, or the dungeons of the you know, it's being consigned to the dungeon of primitive, traumatizing, evil, dehumanizing ways of being. It's being consigned to, and it's being in many ways, it's being, in a concerted, dedicated way, it's being defiled and degraded and destroyed. So that is the how-to, and always was the how-to. And I don't feel sad about it. In fact, it was prophesized that in this age, the age we're living in now, which is said by most gurus and most ancient traditions to be the age where everything is upside down and inverted and turned on its head, that in this age, there would be hordes of false prophets. This is the age of the false prophet. This is why I don't feel sad. I don't feel angry. I just see it as inevitable that in this age, it'll be that much more difficult, almost impossible, for the true seeker to discover, to find what they are looking for, which would be the embodied mirror, faithful, an embodied mirror faithful to the power of the disciples' capacity, faithful to the power of the disciples' presence, faithful to the power of the disciples' uncompromising hunger. That's rare, really rare in this age. So it's a paradox, but this is the age of the paradox, that this is the age of Tantra. It is said very clearly that in this age, Tantra will be the most powerful path, the most relevant, the most effective path for many reasons. But if Tantra is Guru and Guru is Tantra, and that how-to is very much integral to that relating between these two beings, these two entities, then it's just humorous. It makes me smile that if this is the age for that, then it's funny that this is a time where that very relationship is being hunted down and persecuted, lynched and crucified and strung up to be shamed and blamed and hated and feared.
Yeah, I might be such a good example for that, because I can somehow see the sacredness of the temple, of a guru-disciple relationship, and I completely feel like not drawn towards pushing my foot into this door out of woundedness. It's not that I do not know if I otherwise would crave for a guru, but I do feel the kind of woundedness, the kind of betrayal, the kind of perversion that somehow embedded even in the word guru-disciple relationship. Even that on a level makes me vomit. And there is something where I feel it's more honest, or maybe the only, I do not know, authentic or self-responsible or responsible thing to then not push myself into any guru-disciple relationship. And I also feel it like a little bit the other way around, but I feel such a fear of people following me where I share things that help me. And then there is such an allergy against this immediate activation of this field of trauma. I can relate so much. And at the same time, of course, which makes it a little bit more complicated, if Tantra works with death and shadow and hidden energies, it also works with trauma. So it's not that a trauma-disciple relationship would be completely like a fairy tale, but it's also something that is equipped for dark stuff. And so there is something where this era is pretty much like, I think you have to figure it out without a guru, because otherwise you won't figure it out, maybe.
Yeah, it's just, people are at a disadvantage because the way English speakers or Western language speakers, Westernized language speakers in today's modern world, and the way that words are used, the word guru has already been violated. The word guru, as it's spoken about, excuse me, when I hear people who are not Hindu or who are not versed in Hindu and even pre-Hindu traditions and ways of being that uphold the proven benefits of having such education, of having such a relationship with a master as a dedicated, committed disciple. Because, there is no guru without a disciple. So when I hear that word used today, the associations that have become part and parcel of the current usage of the word are negative. So guru has come to be used as a term that tends to represent a one-sided function, and it usually triggers in people's minds an abuse of a power differential. It's come to mean authority that, like an overextension, or a authority that is exercised without consent. Basically, it's used in such a way where people then begin to think automatically, oh, if I have a guru, that means I have to surrender to the guru. If I have a guru, then I have someone who is above me. If I have a guru, then I have to submit. If I have a guru, then what I think and what I feel will be, it's like I have to outsource my sovereignty. I'm no longer sovereign. And if I have a guru, that means I'm not enough as myself, and I have to look to a higher power. And that's not necessary, because we all have a guru within. And I could go into this. I really like this. I haven't gone into this very often, actually. Because it is such a sore point, and it is such a trigger, and it is, I think what I've been more interested in up until now, over the decades, especially in the last, let's say, almost decade, I have been more interested in listening to what people like you have to say about being abused, about having negative and distorted and destructive, damaging experiences because of perverted or toxic relationships of having to submit and surrender and being a victim and being persecuted. So my interest up until now has been about gathering information, has been about listening to all sides, to be able to understand all factors at play. And now I feel it ripening that I would like to refer to Guru in its original essence and its original function. Because I feel that now there'll be people who will be interested in hearing that side, just as I was interested in hearing the other side. I feel that we can meet, and I feel that we can share from all sides what's relevant, what we've experienced. And as you said earlier, to co-create another grid, a grid within the grid, a network within the network, where we can start to bring all of our findings and put all of our cards on the table and all of the preciousness that we have uncovered on the table and see how it comes together and makes something more than the sum of its individual parts. So I feel that, you know, I do feel a ripening to be representative again of what I know the guru disciple relating to, interrelating to be.
Wow. So, so touching and powerful and interesting. And besides footnote for many more conversations, you also embody a very whole experience or access to the guru-disciple potential and relationship, as also written in your nervous system, not only the listening or the knowledge that you gain from listening to wounds around. So I think, who, if not you, would be this kind of bridge? And it makes me very excited to somehow see this unfolding of the ripening, finding forms. And at the same time, I just can reconfirm, and I think I'm a very, very good seismograph for that, how dangerous that feels. I can't even somehow nod to your words without like, it's really amazing, but it's so, I think it might be kind of useful that I'm so hypersensitive to that, because the moment I try to touch in order to help co-create something, I'm like, oh no, I think everybody will just die. So that's very, yeah, I think I'm a very living embodiment of the kind of risk.
I love it. I love that you know it in your bone marrow, let alone your nerves start to ring, you know, and the bells start to vibrate, the warning signs. And I love that you know it and you can communicate as an instrument of that knowing just how dangerous it is. You have to know how dangerous it is. You know, and that's always the point. If you look back to old Tantra, and if you go to, you know, Tantra wasn't necessarily born in India, but the thing about Indian Tantra is that Tantra has thrived in India. You cannot put it down. It's a continuation. It's a continuous way of being that has a place in India. So, you know, if you look back to India, even now, the Tantrikas made it very clear, and the society at large knew how dangerous it was. And they knew and they know that Tantra wasn't and isn't for everybody. And that those signs of how dangerous it was, and the recordings, documentation of how dangerous it was and is accessible, it's available. And today, it's even more necessary that someone like you would be able to not only recognize the dangers, but to communicate.
And I think if we talk about where is the fuel coming from, what is the thing, the matter, the energy that gets transmuted, it is exactly that. It is exactly the amount of trauma that, for example, I might be sensitive for. So when I share this kind of with you, it's not a confession of information. It's adding energy to the field. I mean, like me saying I'm almost freezing is co-creating more than me saying, oh, I think I can't be part of the game just because I'm a lowly initiate. It's quite the opposite. I feel very warm, very empowered. I feel very, very awake in my nervous system. And I think this is a kind of tantric adventure of exploring forms of co-creation for a merging in an era that is not about guru-disciple, with the kiss of the guru-disciple potential and the guru-disciple gift and preciousness. So I feel that, at least when we talk about digesting shadows or Tantra, it fits perfectly. That the woundedness is the path somehow.
Yes, exactly. You go where the energy is. If the energy is there, trapped through the trauma, then that's exactly where the release has to happen. And the energy has to be liberated from where it's most concentrated, in and around and the wounding itself. And the disciple leads the way. I think this has very much been, again, mischaracterized in the guru-disciple interrelating, is that the disciple is an instrumental, integral part of that mix, of that recipe. So you only hear, oh, the guru, the guru, the guru, I don't want a guru, or the guru is this, the guru is that. What about the disciple? The light, the onus is back on the leader. Who leads the way? Who opened the door? It'll always come back to the one who can see. Who's the one who can see? Who's the one who will find the guru? Who's the one who lays eyes on the one who can reflect that they are seeing anything at all? You know, and if today, if this age is upside down, some people disagree. I'm not going to go into that. But let's just say, if I personally have no if, I feel very strongly the upside downness of the age within this age. Then if we look at the guru-disciple relating, and if before in the old Tantra, the focus was on the guru, and we're now in the age of upside down, then where is the focus in this age? Who are we focusing on in this age? We're focusing on the apprentice. We're focusing on the one who's looking. We're focusing on the one who is open, who is opening. We're focusing on the one who is wounded. The focus is not on the guru. Initially, once that dynamic has been initiated And there's one thing you said earlier. You said something about being pushed. You used the word pushed into guru-disciple relationship. There's no push. When you fall in love, do you feel pushed? You fall. What does that feel like? What does it feel like? What, you know, I can speak from my own experience, maybe not right now, but I know what it's like to be the one who finds the one for me. I'm the one who found the one for me. I'm the one who looked for the one who would see me looking at them, looking at me. It's me, it was always me. And I never was pushed. I didn't feel pushed. The only force involved in this love affair, in this interrelating, was the force of all powers that be combined, that included my ancestors, that included the force of my mind at work in my dreams from when I was a child, the forces of my sense organs in the perceiving of the one who was for me, and the force of my mind cognizing the input coming through my sense organs, and the cognizing to the degree where I feel like, yes, 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 this is he, this is he, this is the one I dreamed of. There's no push. You don't try initially to fall in love. You don't have to try to fall in love. You either know your guru or it's not your guru. You can either recognize that being is your master and there is no doubt, or it's not. Initially, of course, later doubt, you'll become very intimate with doubt once that interrelating is initiated, but the initial process, it's undeniable. And if you can deny it, then you don't give your consent, and then you don't surrender, and you don't submit. But you can ask the questions. You can test, always test, 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 test.
I feel a lot of seriousness, like me being silent or not leaving silence for words, or even while I'm speaking, staying silent is like there is a very firm substance in front of me, which is this monstrum of guru-disciple relationship. And you also referred to how dangerous that is, which also pays credit to how powerful. I mean, how can something be that fast, too much, and the wrong thing, if it wouldn't be in the first place something that can be so incredibly, undeniably right? So the potency and the kind of distillation that is in this topic, together with the amount of trauma and sensitivity in my nervous system, but I only use my nervous system as a kind of mirror also for the collective wounding in this area. There is a seriousness of almost like, okay, let's co-create another bridge or web or field or accessibility or another kind of unformed form, for this to be not something that's just lost and we cannot touch. And there is something of my nervous system standing there without trembling, but trembling in that, in a very firm, substantial way, like very, very serious, something very serious, very embodied, almost like being filled with anger in a soft, expansive, but very solid way. Yeah, feels very good.
And part of the how, and part of the preparation, we talked about the training step by step, is to purify, of course, to cleanse, to come to that meeting, having sacrificed addictiveness. The addictiveness is the, if anyone was to point fingers or find point to the pathology, even before a guru-disciple relating, it would be in the condition. Let's look at the condition, the health condition, the physical, emotional, mental health condition of that seeker, of that one who thinks they want a guru, or they think it's time, or they like the idea, or they feel that they're being pushed, and is to do the necessary healing before coming to Tantra, and therefore the guru-disciple interrelating. And I just want to, clarify this point here, because it's not so much the guru as a person, or even the disciple as the person. It's the dynamic that they set up between them. It's the electricity and the potency of the receiving and transmission that is going backwards and forwards through them. It's the alignment of their relating and a greater relating. It could be sun and moon, it could be the earth and the sun, it could be the individual and the universal. But
it's again a grid. It's a grid.
Mm-hmm. So that's what the guru-disciple is setting up, is they're setting up an alignment, they're setting up an accordance, they're setting up a resonance that ultimately is pure and true and whole, is a mirroring and therefore an invitation of greater hookups, dynamics, relating, interrelating, and potency. And so ultimately that interrelating is a microcosm of a macrocosmic potential that ripens and bursts and streams and overflows until both micro and macro are brimming and communicating between each other. We're talking about an accordance, we're talking about an alignment, we're talking about raw, pure, natural laws and dynamics and functions. I think today people get so caught up in the guru as a person and not zooming out and understanding that it's not so much the person, because there is no fixed guru. There is a function, there is a dynamic at play that can only be initiated and substantiated through the interrelating of both the guru and the shishya and the disciple. And if the onus and the focus in this day and age is not so much on the guru because it's upside down, and it's on the seeker, the power is there. The power is in the hands of the one who will recognize and who will command the guru to exist, to reveal through the person, the embodied human, that they will undeniably apprehend and behold as that revealing, as that commandment is happening. The one who commands is not the guru, because the guru function is not yet revealed. The commander is the one who has the eyes open, eyes wide open, eyes seeing, nervous system recognizing, nervous system and whole system, if there's recognition, being intoxicated. You know, there's a lot of fear and fuss about being recruited by a guru, being recruited into a cult. And that's why I'm saying there has to be the healing done first. Mm-hmm. So that you really do go eyes wide open. Mm-hmm. So that you really do encounter relating with other people whereby you have the full right and encouragement to ask the questions, ask the hard questions, to test, mm-hmm. to take time. So in the old Tantra, it's known, you know, these are codes. It's not necessarily the way it's going to work out, but it's a teaching enfolded in a code where it would be said that you take 12 years. If you recognize someone who if you as a disciple or the seeker recognize the one who can see you, seeing them, see you, and so you set up this dynamic, you would be recommended to test that one for 12 years. There's the code, 12 meaning completion. So you test them until it's done, until everything adds up, everything checks out. You are getting, you're having results, right? And then it said, once the disciple has tested their potential master for 12 years, then the guru tests the disciple for 12 years. And then after they've tested each other, then they're relating. Once the disciple is initiated, their relating is tested. Then they have to have results of that relating for another 12 years. But by that time, it just keeps multiplying by 12. It could be 24, it could be 48. And it goes on, because by that time, once the initiation has happened, it's forever. There is no going back. And because there's no going back, you have to test first. You have to know this is right. It has to check out. You have to inside out. You have to put it under the microscope. So the first stage is telescoping in. Is this the one? Is this it? And it's not even about the person, as we said. Is this relating? All encompassing, all embracing, all allowing, all potentializing. Then you take the leap, because you leap into forever. You leap into the all. You leap into the one in the all. You leap into the all in the one. And if it isn't, keep moving on. But the power is back in your hands. You always did have the power. This is why it's not going to be traumatizing. Surely there will be traumatic, there will be disruption, of course. There will be the uncovering and the cleaning of the wound. There will be the pain of recalibration. but it doesn't have to be traumatized. It doesn't have to be, you know, there's even traumatizing. It's traumatizing because you're in the process. So it's traumatizing, but you stay in the process and you go through the traumatizing phases. You keep going through. It doesn't mean that you're going to be stamped and forever traumatized.
Mm-hmm. It's so wonderful that our one definition of trauma is it's not the event, it's what we are holding on to. So the moment you somehow rephrase traumatizing, it's you don't hold on to it. I think having a container that is able to move through happening, wounding, overwhelm is something that is in itself on a level not leaving you with a trauma, because the container is strong enough for whatever reason to not hold on to that.
Yes. Yeah, and so this is why in the tantric tradition, you have to, or you would, be required, because the guru, just by being with the guru, this would happen as a natural course, a natural matter of course. And I don't want to go into the specifics of that. There would be an emptying, essentially. And from a thorough emptying, then what do you have left to be traumatized? What is there that you're still holding on to if you're empty? And if you're empty, you cannot be traumatized, because there's nothing there to be impacted on or interfered with or corrupted or perverted or violated. There's nothing there. There's no material to be messed with.
It reminds me of
vulnerability. This is the true vulnerability. This is the true innocence. This is the true purity. If you go all the way to the purity, then no matter what happens to you, there's nothing there to change. You are resting in changelessness.
It reminds me of the beginning of the conversation around living off the grid led to an emptying out.
Yes.
And I think as seekers, it's so easy to say, I need to take more in. And the answer is so much more, how do I create the space where the natural instinct of emptying myself out of what has been too much can happen on its own self-regulating wise way. And to some extent, it makes so much sense. It was on my mind so often, like every trauma, let's say every for now, seems to be already a re-traumatization because it dealt with a substance inside. And this substance inside is like, it's not meant to be there in the very, very first place. So it's like me, maybe before my birth, maybe in a prenatal trauma, I stepped out of paradise in order to create the substance that then could be messed with. And I love this. I mean, I again feel from my culture, my own wounding, my own story with self-hatred, how insanely carefully I have to give words to that. And I still want to try. There is something of me as a baby maybe being traumatized, me feeling guilty for that. And I refer to guilt not so much as something like an information around what does this voice say in your brain, not as a feeling. It's not a feeling. It is definitely, guilt is a trauma symptom. And it's like the guilt reminds me of, I have left myself. Why have I done that? It's like the feeling guilty for the trauma is not, oh, I do not deserve something better, but it's almost like referring to the step before the traumatic event that is about me having stepped out of paradise. Me. I did that. I stepped out of paradise.
Yes.
How to undo this step. How to find the bridge back. And there is something so complex also in the then dissolution of the perpetrator and the victim, and something so you cannot decide if the wound is the problem or the solution. You just can't. You just are with the matter that has called you. And you somehow did that and have that and deal with that, and you are that.
Yes, you know, when you said that this substance that was there to be messed with, but that substance is also exactly what is used to shape your whole form of and function, so that you can have every possible experience in the spectrum. So the issue is not with the substance, it's with the programmed relationship to it and what happens. So there could be, again, zooming out, where the substance is being messed with, but it's your relating to that messing that is the paradisical overview that has to be switched back on.
It's for example, a mini example, I think, is the moment when I shared about my fear or trembling with this guru-disciple relationship, a vision or remembrance that you offered, or that you offer, or this bridge. It's like, this is the path, or this is the substance, is the gift that I can bring to the table, instead of the substance of trauma is the problem, why I have to stay apart from the game or from the co-creation. It's like the substance of trauma is what the bridges, is what the stones of this bridge back is made of.
Yeah. So this, you know, when you say that the remembrance of the guru-disciple relationship, I'm not offering that as a role, or I'm not offering that as a possibility. I'm not offering that as an eventuality. It is me remembering my experience of having a guru, and it's me communicating the context that I've been educated in and that I can refer to from my tradition as a Hindu Indian. So just by us having this conversation, that could already be enough. That could already be triggering enough or inspiring enough. Even the triggering is a gift, you know, that we can sit here and talk about, even using the words guru, disciple, are setting up a charge. And just that charge is enough in my mind. It's enough of a gift. It's enough of something to work with. It's enough of a pea under the mattresses that the princess laid on and could not get away with, you know, the princess and the pea. You know that story in the fairy tale?
Yes,
yeah?
Yes.
So, you know, for me, this is like, it could just be a pea and sort of disturb the princess so that she has to dig it out and find other ways to get her beauty sleep. And that's enough for me. For me, it's just so substantial, so much enough of a substance to work with the juice and essence, to just even use the word guru, and to even feel someone's to even, you know, here's the thing, if you look at the Princess and the Pea story, that's how, according to one of the tellings of this tale, that's how the princess was recognized as royal, because she could feel the pea, because she was triggered, because she couldn't just go to sleep, because she had that much sensitivity to this round, you know, ball of a thing that could penetrate through all of those soft, cushy layers and disturb her nervous system. Her nervous system would not be at rest. And so in a way, you know, for me, just to talk about guru disciple and to encounter people's disturbance, and is for me to be able to see their sensitivity of their nervous system, for me to be able to understand a little bit more of how they're triggered, why they're triggered. It's an invitation. If it is an invitation, then we can both go into it and really start to break it down and analyze it. And not just let the whole thing get buried. At least from my perspective. It'll never be buried, because it's the reason why I'm here. I'm able to even speak English again. Why I'm able even here, healthy as I am, is because of that interrelationship with guru disciple. So I'll be talking about it as long as anyone is listening. I will be going there now more than ever, because I feel, okay, then let's go to this wound. Let's go where the energy is. Let's go to the perpetrator victim. And let's do the healing work. Because if people really are drawn to Tantra, then let's do the preparation necessary, which will be to look at the addictiveness, which will be to investigate the symptoms and to be able to understand the pathology and get to work and roll our sleeves up and bring the remedies and bring the therapy and repair and rebuild. And then we start to step towards the void, and then we start to rebuild the bridge together. And then we start to allow, you know, that technology that has been preserved and treasured, because it works. It's a working technology. It's the how-to in old Tantra. And, you know, my excitement isn't so much revolving around the guru. It revolves around the ones whose you know, whose appetite is lit up, the ones who have digestive fire, and it's regulated and it's burning. You know, the ones who lick their lips, the ones whose saliva is dripping, you know, the ones who are unafraid, truly unafraid to it's not even so much fear, it's like they don't want to get their hands dirty by pulling out the fruits, the vegetables, you know, about putting the produce on the table and getting a knife with a sharp blade and sacrificing that watermelon and sacrificing the apple. The one who's going to eat, the one who's sitting at the table. My excitement revolves around that, revolves around the ones who show up at the feast.
I'm so silent because I somehow feel so interested in tracking, getting to know this emerging substance of the wound and the path, like really meeting such a global trauma. I mean, such a trauma, such a way of no escape, but getting confused in the very first step. It's insane how much this field is burning and somehow immobilizing. And I can say again and again my nervous system, but I truly think I'm not that special around the woundedness and the amount of betrayal. I'm only special in the amount of how trained I am being that sensitive. And yes, others are less wounded, but there are also others way more wounded than I am. And it's like two things. First of all, my kind of embodiment is a very global one, like very much focusing on everything at the same time, like having no focus, being truly like super soft focus or defocused. And at the same time, very focused, like every point in the atmosphere is a point where I chain myself to with full attentiveness. This kind of, I'm super much focusing on every point at the same time. So that's also like feeling in the polarity of being in space, very, very distilled in an inner core or point. And there are two other things shimmering that are interesting. One thing is like not defining the relationship through the limitation or the difference or the boundary, but through almost running towards the guru with a sense of warmth, being warmed there. And the other thing is feeling taken serious, as if, when you say for example, truly unafraid people, and there is something of fear and something of, she's speaking about the essence, she's taking the essence serious, she knows. So it's not about a guru challenging or demanding and then somebody being overwhelmed, but somebody being recognized first in the essence by the guru and then by herself or himself. It's like a bridge. It's like it's a translation trick that somehow accelerates the process, because otherwise I would stare into the mirror and would see an afraid rabbit.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
It's an acceleration process. Everything you said is spot on. So now you start to see how it's a technology.
Yeah.
It's not about frozen role play. That's so terrifying. Who's been traumatized. It's a biochemistry. It's you know, it's bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. And it really in me, I mean, I'm just somehow giving words to that because I think that's somehow amazing. I mean, it's amazing for me on something I could say unexpected for the mind, but also I think something so crucial in the living exploration of how to re-establish a super, let's say, healed frame or aura or atmosphere around guru disciple for those who want to, or who live that, whatever. And it is a sense of being more in myself instead of being more distracted with the outer world. And I think it's like when we talk about something of co-creating there, this is happening. I can feel the substance. I can feel the rewiring in my nervous system just in this conversation. And I could say in this conversation more than in every other format. Like now doing something of, let's do a class tomorrow would be completely off. Like what is happening now? I mean, this is the bridge. This is this is a process. It won't get any better than here. This is rolling. And I feel super, super interested because I feel the edge of the trembling and the risk, and at the same time, the well-tested technology of this is contained. This is what we are talking about. This is not.
How is it contained?
It's not risky. The risk is not risky. The risk is the well-known material.
Yeah.
So there is also something impersonal awaiting you in entering the space, which makes so many things so much easier. Otherwise, everything is personal and therefore tragic. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. The impersonal. Yeah.
And somehow really taking you that serious and somehow loving you that much as the person. I mean, that's in itself is so wonderful, because it's not about let's overcome the personality, but about the impersonal space. The first thing that the impersonal space will throw itself onto is the person.
Yeah. Is
what you in your self-hatred could call the problem.
Right.
That's amazing. I'm so eager about spending words on that, and also to witness as much from inside and outside at the same time, and as much in English. After us beating up this language, let's try to reanimate it. Because it is that the healing shift, even though it might take 100 years, who knows, it works also instantly. And it works also in me, and I really consider myself to be a hard case. So I'm very interested in the technology being present here with the tools, using the tools, and me witnessing that I'm part of this scenario.
Exactly. And that the trembling is, it's a big part of, it's an ingredient in the mix. You tell me about the trembling a little more. This trembling that you feel, the trembling, the fear, speak to that a little. Speak of that.
I recognize this trembling from knowing my body trembling in a physical way, like shivering. But that's not happening that much at the moment. I could say on a very subtle level, but it is the very same, it's exactly the same trembling, just happening on another level. And it feels like being very much expanded in space. I could say 100 meters around.
Yes.
I mean, if I would give a form to that on the level of my eyes and my forehead, on that level or height, 100 meters, 360 degree around, and I'm somehow flowing in my senses to this limit without a limit. But it is like a kind of being stretched that much in space, that I meet something that is wide and existent, and it meets something that is wide and the void. And there in the middle, I feel an instinct in me relating to this collective field of trauma-disciple trauma, and guru-disciple trauma and guru-disciple relationship potential or essence. I feel an instinct of, if I push myself further, I hand myself, in that case, over to you, in a way that would basically teach me nothing, because I would do my step out of my paradise. And if I would step back, I would leave, okay, let's say I would leave the fun, I would lose interest, I would choose boredom instead of my instincts, because my instincts feel like perfectly equipped for just resting there. And there almost, and that's so interesting about our conversation, living on the grid, off the grid, off the grid, it's almost like the instincts recover in the space between where both worlds happen. And I'm into Tantra like right now, make love. They really meet as opposite forces. Exactly. And create the resting sphere in between, which is so full of adventure and of challenge. But it's almost like me deciding when the challenge is the too much that could be traumatic, by me relating to this happening in a way that I can choose to not relate to at any given moment in my life. I can choose to not relate to the substance that I'm entering with in a way. It's like I'm in charge.
Yes.
I really experience this moment that whatever happens to me from the outer world, I somehow feel me seeing my essence, which is I'm in charge if something is a trauma or not. I'm in charge, always.
Exactly.
And this immortality or inescapable absolute empowerment is revealed to me with so much more grace and compassion and love. And like I do not have to do anything when there is a guru who just not knows the path or leads me, but just stays with me in order to reconfirm that we are made to stay. We are wired for staying. I cannot see any other, let's say, nourishing comfort zone. Nourishing comfort, nourishing, it's okay, nourishing healing, but resting where the trembling is. And at the same time, it's of service for me and of the service for the space ever expanding. It's so beautiful. And it's so sweet that those wounds that I can feel so shitty for, ashamed for, are what opens the beauty. It's like the most beautiful thing that I can bring to the temple is how much I'm not enough to put it into these words, because it feels like that.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
And this time, it's again feeling so immersed by self-love. But this time, last time I mentioned self-love in this conversation, I said self-love and it made me desperate. And this time it's a self-love, not me seeing that, but it's steaming out of myself, out of my cells, which makes it be like the warmest skin inside, the warmest home.
My battery is running out.
That's so wonderful. What a wonderful Uma, I have to tell you something about this synchronicity. It's not the other, let's say the guru vanishing the moment that everything is recognized inside. That's just cosmic theater. It couldn't be better. Yeah. The world on the grid collaborates. So sweet.
All that's left is our love and our friendship and our, just connection that needs no grid. It just is. I'm going to stay with your words, the resting in the trembling. I love that. Resting, staying in the trembling. The staying part.
Like the instincts, the nervous system. Like it's weird because I think you somehow refer to the guru bossing you around, go to the trembling, go to the edge. because you resist your own nervous system. Because if I truly tell you the truth, my nervous system wants nothing else and can nothing better than being there. It wants to be there. It doesn't want to be drawn to it's like the moment I surrender to what I want, where I want to breathe my life is the moment that this whole thing with the guru is somehow gone before it began, because it's my nervous system is the tantric design. It's almost like the methodology or the kind of do this or whatever. It's like it's almost recalling the nervous system in a way of, we listened enough, we see you, you are allowed. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
like the divinity.
It's magic.
Yeah,